Yeah, oh, Prof here, and we're gonna do a relatively quick video. And that is about some stuff that just came in from Amazon. You're like, why video on that? Well, first off, I can finally put those away. They still need to be cleaned. They are the definition of disgusting. You can just see like the buildup. The other thing, not that you guys can see it, but when you hit it with the right light, you can see that when sitting on the table here, these ear cups leave like a circle of probably face oils from how long I've used them for. So it might be time for some new ear cups. I think it's like $50 for ear cups though, and who knows what the current tariffs, what it is. But these are able to go back in their home safely and soundly. Now, yeah, we got a lot of shit I gotta put away. I was using the black cable for those. I may start using the black cable for these. Just because it got so beaten up. Like the blue one, I should say, got so beat up. And though this one is thicker, it's actually like more flexible. Seems a bit more durable as well. I'll give it a shot, just because that blue one's been. What I do need is if anybody know of a nice case for the Sony MDR MV1s. These left marks. I don't know if you saw that over here on the desk too. You can see the oils on there. So maybe I just gotta wipe them off. Hold on, I have a kitten that's destroying probably my sweatshirt. Hey, what are you doing? Here. You guys want to see what I'm talking about with those? Look at that. You can see like the circles from where they were sitting cupped down. I definitely need to wipe those off. Look at this stuff. Somebody really wants in. Paisley Marie, is that you? Paisley? What's that little thing over there, huh? What's this little guy? She wants Gertrude's food. I gotta give her some crap, right? Both of these gotta get clean. But yeah, if you guys know of, as far as I can tell, Geek Korea doesn't make a nice case for these. Those are my mains I use at home. Whereas my MV1s were the mains I used at work. Now, it'll probably be the M1s once I kind of burn them in. Till then, I'll probably be taking them back and forth, just so they get used enough, because I am only in office 2 days a week, and they probably won't get enough use if I don't do that. The reason why I can get the M1STs in here is because get back up in that office. It's because right here. Oh, that's my laptop. That doesn't need to be on the desk area there. Obviously, we need to use the skeletonized guy somewhere. Oh, that was blatant, I guess. Yep. You're like, didn't you just show one of those? Yep. I'm gonna have to mark them just like I did with my R70X. R70X Refine. And then there's gonna be an R70XA that I haven't bought the case for yet. But that's vibing out at the desk at the moment. It's not a huge thing. But these I plan to go to work or bring to work. And once they're broken, they'll probably just stay there. I can use the M1STs at home. Or I can normally I would just use open back. So I left this originally how they had it. You're not going to want to do this. What you're actually going to want to do is put something in it, like a cable, for one thing. We'll take one of these here, and put this in. Oh, we shouldn't use that one. That's not the one we're going to use for this. This one's got a little bit of schmoo in it. I like these though because they're hard, but yet soft. We'll see if that's a good placement. I can see that it's moved before. That just unvelcros like that. So what we're going to do is take my Sony MDR MV1s here. Of course, it went on the floor. Unscrew this Geekria cable. All right. And that's the back. I always use size 4 on Sony. Every one of them fits that way. These do have a little much deeper cups than the original M1ST. I would argue even deeper than the Axi pads. This one definitely started tightening up. Like the mesh seems super loose, like it didn't have the same speaker build under there, possibly, but it does. So I'm gonna leave them at 4, right? Because that's how I want them to fit in here, and they do. They still just fit perfectly. So that now you're gonna take this guy, that's Velcro, right? And take it and push up there, just like that. We might even want to do it a little bit more. There we go. And take this out and put it back in. Make sure it closes still perfectly fine. And it does. The next thing you'll do, take your cable. This one's super flexible. Also super gets cat claws and teeth stuck in it if they decide to latch onto it. So we'll have to see how it lasts that way. But still, this is $40, or the lower one I think is like 37 or 38. And the real Japanese ones are like more than 100. Yeah, that's pre-tariffs. Now who the fuck knows? And I think aftermarket ones in the US are still like 85 to 105, somewhere around there. So that's my recommendation, is because you want this to stick to here to close in this open area, right? So you put it like that, close it, push down, open it up, stays there. So when it ships, it's literally like opposite the way around. So that's how this guy's going to stay here. Something that I would recommend if you're going with the Geekria balance cable is go on there on Amazon or Shenzhen Audio or wherever you get your stuff. Probably Amazon, because that's where you got your Geekria case. And get yourself, depends which what you normally use, get yourself a 4.4 mil to 3.5 mil, or they have 4.4 mil to 1/4 inch, which looks kind of like, well, this is a 4.4 mil XLR, right? I have one of these that looks like this. This is a 3.5 mil to 1/4 inch, right? That is 2.5 mil to 4.4 mil. That's upstairs someplace. So it's kind of like a combination. Like imagine combining these two. You know, or maybe you want to carry these two and you can just stick them together. Depends what you're mostly using, right? They didn't actually make a 4.4 mil to 1/4 inch for the longest time, so basically this is what I did. But, you know, don't forget to keep all your adapters, and, you know, that's why there are all those little slots and spots and stuff like that. Otherwise, if you only have your balance cable and you have to plug it into your laptop, I think you're hooped. Yeah, but this packs up really nicely. I would say this zipper is definitely not as broken in. There you go. Pull out your cable right there. So that's just the first thing in this. So far, highly recommending the MDR M1s. I think the M1STs still fit me better with those Yaxi pads, but the price difference is just not worth it at all. Gertrude, you want out? Let's go. I let you out. Come here, Gertrude. And hey, Paige Marie. Pat, you're being long cat. What's up? Gotta get myself a Pocari Sweat, or what's left of mine. Thirsting. There's so much left in there. Like I said, I was thirsting. Just a reminder, if you do get any of the modern Sony reference studio monitor headphones, you gotta make sure your cable is a 4-pole, 3.5 millimeter. You're like, oh, that's easy. Every headset is that. It's locking. Also, this 4-pole is not for mic, like most of these would be. The 4-pole is for balanced. If you don't have the locking collar like the Geekria has, even the very early Sony cables didn't have it, because they're actually for a previous model that didn't have, or at least didn't have the screw-on locking collar. It like locked in another way. Those wore out almost instantly. I shouldn't say almost instantly, but over regular use. And they were a $50 to $150 cable. So what do we have in there? We have these. You're making a video about network cables. Yes, I am. And the reason is because so many of you are buying the wrong network cables. Let me get the rest of these opened up here. I don't even think this is all of them. I bought like a whole bunch. If you don't need 10 gig, just buy them from True Cable. True Cable has certified CAT6 cables. They are working on getting CAT6a. You do not need nor want. Well, first off, CAT7 really isn't even an Ethernet standard, and CAT8 is for 40 gig Ethernet, which You're like 40 gig fiber. People have that. No, 48 Ethernet. Ain't nobody that's got that. Maybe not nobody, but like none of you at home have 40 gig Ethernet more than likely. So stick with CAT6a. The nice thing about CAT6a is that you guys can still at home terminate it yourself. You're like, why are you saying terminate yourself? You're showing us patch cables right there. Well, there's a reason why. Those are short because they're patch cables. Paisley, those are my glasses. You gotta blow my nose. Am I not allowed to blow my nose now? Alright. So, we got a couple different batches of patch cables here. We have unshielded. These are super thin. These are 30 gauge. Super thin. We have, once again, unshielded 30 gauge. And this should also be, I really like how those turned out. Unshielded 30 gauge right there. Then, we have, did I just get like one of these? What the hell? Okay, well I definitely ordered like 2 to 4 of those. I can't check Amazon because we're on my phone that I would use to check Amazon. Okay. Normally I would get these black ones. I prefer the black over the blue, but the blue was half the price. 7 foot, 7 foot, 7 foot blue, 7 foot blue. And for some reason the blue differs, which is gonna irk the living hell out of me. That blue, you guys cannot tell me that blue is not different from that blue, because it is. That's a completely different cable. That is legitimately, like you can see here, these are blue tie wraps as well. I don't know what to tell you there. Monoprice is probably my recommended place to get Ethernet. Now, if you're getting bulk now, I would say go with True Cable. 3 foot, 3 foot, 3 foot. Okay, so I had plans for 3 foot, so that's why I got 4 of them right there. These were also cheap, the 7 foots. That's why I got 4, because I actually only needed 2. But because they were half price, I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna spend the same either way. For these, which are the non-shielded, we have a 10 pack of 3 foot in red, a 10 pack of 5 foot in green, and a 10 pack of 7 foot in blue, that darker blue. I prefer the lighter blue. Now you're like, why nothing longer than 7 foot? Well, I already have 10 foot in gray in the unshielded. And that's where basically I ended up having to use some of my shielded cables for where I needed to use unshielded cables. A lot of my unshielded were too long because I basically just bought a pack of, I needed some 10 footers, or at least longer than 7 footers. And I wanted to test if new cables were going to fix my issue. The answer to that was yes. Yes, they did. It turns out when you're using patch cables that are 20 years old, and you're like, CAT6a patch cables that are 20 years old? Yes. Yes, indeed. Delivered today, arriving tomorrow. Apparently my other 1 foot ones, like this guy here, are gonna arrive tomorrow. So these are relatively thin. These are CAT6a shielded, much stiffer, basically inflexible, 36 gauge. Snagless RJ45. What the snagless is it means this little cover. The big thing about this little cover here is that I hate the ones that are domes, right? So this is a little like kind of hood over the top. Click, click. What that also means is because it's a hood and not like a dome, you can peel it back if you have to, and push the clip directly. Snagless means when you pull it through other cables, because this is over there, it's not going to snag. That's all that means. They still snag, mind you. And the dome ones, you squish the dome down, and basically there's not enough play in the dome for you to actually unlatch the cable. I have successfully used, I don't remember what length they were. I think I had like maybe 2 to 4 5-foots and 2 to 4 7-foots of, like, you know, this guy right here in black. Right, I ended up going with blue with 7-foot, like I said, because they're like half off, maybe less. These are the Slim Run series. If you're getting patch cables, get Slim Run as long as they abide by, you know, it says CAT6a, they're shielded, they're certified. They aren't individually tested. That is something that True Cable does do. Like I said, as soon as True Cable does CAT6a, and especially, I've told them, like, I need CAT6a shielded. And they know that's a thing because they have patch panels that are either CAT6 or CAT6a shielded. They skip just plain old CAT6a in a lot of cases. So why all these short ones? Because that's what a patch cable should be, guys. Generally speaking, patch cables go from 1 to 14 foot. You can push it to 25. Some of these very thin, you know, you want your 30 gauge, 30 AWG, right? You want those in 25 foot. A lot of them, like, if I recall correctly, True Cable might not even make it in their Cat6. Depending on which one of these, whether you go shielded or not, depending if you, what do you want to say, like, depending which version you get, which model you get, they may not be available. Might be up to 25 foot. For the most part, I've seen 25 foot as kind of like the cap. Like that, technically, in a lot of the specs, the 25 foot is the cap for a patch cable, right? Real world recommendation says cap it out at 14, right? Because if you're realistically going more than 14 feet, like 14 feet, that's like, remember, 2 outlets. Outlets are always spaced 6 foot apart. So that means you're plugging something in more than 2 outlets away in a room. Maybe you do have a lot of that. After 14, more than, like, you know, once you get up 25, maybe. I wouldn't get one of these, though. They're specifically much beefier. And even if you need a 50-foot patch cable, personally, at that point, I might consider doing, you know, like your own spool of wire and keystones on the end, and then using little 1-foot or 3-foot patch cables at the end of that, rather than, because that's going to be much thicker, much more durable. Then you can use solid core as well, because this is obviously using stranded wire. So then you can do stuff like that and not cause an issue, right? You know, make a little loop-de-loop there. This is very, very thin. I think the gray ones have been on the channel before. Or the gray, the 10-foot variant of this. Now, when it comes to the colors, there's multiple ways of doing it. I, in this case, am sticking with a color per length, and I've just bought the cheapest color that's available, right? That way, when I go in the box, I can know that blue is my 7-foot cable, red is my 3-foot, green is my 5-foot, right? The other way that, if you're actually in industry using this, that you would use is you would make a certain VLAN, a certain color, or you would do, if it's going to switch group A and switch group B, you'd make all the switch group A colors, A devices one color, all the switch group B devices one color. They even have power cables to do that, red and blue. or just so that you can track like which is going to which bank, which is the main, which is the redundant. But these are highly thin, highly flexible. These two specific Slim Run monoprice are what I'm going to suggest. Don't be buying CAT6 anymore. If you guys need, like, for example, this pack of 10 7-foot cables, right, was like $20-something, right? And that's for unshielded, right? Now these shielded cables get much, much, much more expensive. One of these can be $10, $8 to $10. These are normally $10 or more dollars, the 7-foot, unless you're like, oh, I don't care that it's blue. Yeah, I'll get a blue one for $4. I really don't care. Now, if there isn't a price difference, I can start caring about color. But I'm not doing anything. I'm going to label all of the wires anyway, so I'm not doing anything critical enough where color is going to matter. Something like this is what you'd use to go from, like, the reason why I need these short guys is I need to go from one switch into another switch, or from my router into another switch. You'd also use a 3-foot depending on where it is, but you shouldn't be buying, like, say if you only have to go 5 feet, generally speaking, don't go and buy the 10-foot cable. Buy a 5-foot cable. That is a big thing that I have had issues with my desk in the past, and here, I'll give you a look down here. Yeah, there's a lot of extra cable under there. People are like, oh, it's so nasty, why don't you pick it up? Because I couldn't give a shit less. That's why the backs are on those desks, so they can't see up your skirt, and so you can't see your cables. Tee-hee. Now, if you look at my computer case, it is all nicely done. Maybe once I'm back in the office, if there is permanent... Now that I know, like, this is my monitor configuration, right? Maybe I'll... Especially because it's all going to go on monitor arms and stuff, I might more permanently wire it. But it's on the floor under your desk. The more you cable manage it, the more of a pain in the ass it's going to be when you have to change it. I don't care that much. But what I have found is, say if you're only going 4 foot with a power cable, right? Don't, and for the most part, power cables are coming in, like, your 3-pin PC ones that go to some monitors and stuff. They're either 6-foot or 12-foot. Don't be using the 12-foot cable. Use the 6-foot cable. I made that mistake where I just ordered everything in 10-foot when I really needed a 4-foot, a 6-foot, and a 12-foot for monitors, because it's all going to your computer on the one side. And like that excess you coil up, coiling a cable and running it is going to induce RFI, radio frequency interference, stuff like that. You can, like, that's actually how you make an electromagnet, is you wrap something around it and run power through it. Or you're making an antenna, depending on how you're doing it. That's another big thing, is if you do not know that your stuff is properly grounded, like both ends of where you're plugging the grounded patch cable in, right? If both ends you do not know are properly, purposely grounded properly, do not use a shielded cable. You are going to cause yourself more headaches than solving problems, because you are going to have an open ground. Basically what's going to happen is this side is grounded and that side isn't, so the entire wire, especially because, remember, you should be buying these the correct length, they're going to be pretty straight at that point, right? So they're going to just be acting as a giant antenna. So if you have stuff, or like if you ever look at the Ethernet connector, and if you notice, this has the gold metal around it, right? That means it's shielded. If we look at these, if you notice, no metal around the connector. These are not shielded. Often on a lot of like IoT devices, like for example, one would be my Philips Hue bridge. That connector on that device is only plastic. There is no metal in there. So what would happen is, say your switch is properly grounded, right? And you take this cable you plug it happily into the switch side. It's grounded. It's got the metal connector, right? It's got shielding, right? Shielding's running around the outside of all your twisted pairs. In the case of CAT6a, it's individually shielded twisted pair. So basically there's pairs of wire in here that are separated, right? And then they're shielded from each, not from the two wires from each other, but the pairs of 4 are all shielded in here. That's why it's so stiff. Like here, like that. That's about as much bend as you can get out of these without having issues. Here we can. There's not much compared to, you know, like this guy that we showed off, which you could make a loop-de-loop out of. And if you don't, like if you use shielded, or sometimes some of those low-end switches, this is why those low-end switches can cause issues as well. The low-end, especially the 4 to 5, there aren't 4 ports, there's 5 ports, because at the 4 port there, the 4 or 5 ports are actually really hubs. A lot of those might say they're switches, but there's a reason why there's 5 ports, is because one of them at the end is, the last 2 are kind of, there's actually like an in and out on a lot of those, rather than being a proper switch. So generally stick with the 8 port or more switches. But most of those, even the 8 ports, actually have the 2-prong AC adapter that go to them. That means that they're not properly grounded. That alone can cause issues, right? Now, sometimes there's actually a grounding either screw on the side or a grounding thread, or so you could ground them. Most people don't. Well, if you're not grounding that switch properly, right? Don't use a shielded cable that expects a proper ground, right? So for something like that, you're going to go into your bag, right? And you're going to get a Paisley Marie who attacks you out of nowhere. You're going to go and get one of your unshielded and for most of you out there, unless you're having issues and unless you know things are proper grounds, these are the guys you want to get right here. No shielding in sight. Not going to cause you issues. You're actually better off. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I got to get the best cable. I got to get the shielded. Got to get the yada, 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 yada. Time and time again, it is proven. And even in my own setup, there are like, I put shielded. I just bought a giant spool of shielded cable. And I was actually making my own cables. My own cable tester, right? Can't do less than 8 feet. Because the wire does not twist enough times. And I was making short little patch cables. You don't be doing that. Don't bother. These companies can shit them out. They can make them thinner and better than you ever can. Like, look at how close that wire is to that connector. Like, when you do it, you're lucky to get this here, right? It's got a crimp right there. And then often the wires are individualized already. You want that wire as close to those pins as you can to get proper signal integrity. And they're going to knock that out of the park. Now, if you see one in here that's a little bit wonky, I would pull it. Like this guy right there, a little bit wonky. That would probably the last one I would use, is the one that's a little jank on the inside. And that's the nice thing about these, is because they're fully clear. You can see them. Like there's one that's bulging right there. It might be the other end of the one that we just showed. But realistically, unless you guys know, like I know that my server, the server itself, is properly grounded and it is plugging, because it is right next to the 10 gig switch. I know that it is properly plugging in 10 gig, right? So I'm going to use a shielded cable. Bob. And how do I know my switch is grounded, my 10 gig switch? Because it actually uses a 3-prong power, right? Still on the side though, for once it goes in the rack, not only would you have the 3-prong power, but there is a thread or a spot for ground wire. And once you get the network switch in place in your rack, those of you that do IT work are going to know that you ground that to the rack properly. And there will be spots on a thing behind where they screw, or the front, the I don't know what you want to call those tabs, screw in, right? A bit behind there'll be a bar where all the grounds for all the stuff should screw in, right? And you actually ground, and then the front door of the rack is grounded to the main rack. Then there is a grounding spot in the rack, often straight copper, right? That then you have to ground to your house wall, etc. True Cable does sell an adapter that's basically like a prong, like a two-prong thing like you saw me make on my previous subwoofer cable, right? And then that can plug right into the ground plug on your wall. And yes, you want to go straight into the ground plug on your wall, not through your surge protector, because you're grounding the rack. Often that surge protector, which should be a UPS, right, or is going to be a PDU, power delivery unit, which often like controls where power is going to the devices, might have a surge protector in it. That's going to be plugged into the wall directly. You know, or the PDU gets plugged in the UPS gets plugged in the wall. You do not want the ground for the rack that all is all in plugged into the UPS. You want that ground for the rack plugged into the wall. Now, if you're doing this professionally, there may be different codes and standards for either what you're trying to do or where you're trying to do it. So, you know, if the ground cable is just this thin, imagine even if it's solid core this thin, remember 10 gauge wire is the minimum for a ground. I believe that's what True Cables is, or it's somewhere around there. That legally may not be enough for you if you're doing this professionally, and for having like a network room, there may be codes and stuff like that in your area that require something more. Now for the home user, home gamer, probably not the case, right? Also, if you're not in like big industry, putting in a big rack or anything like that, that may not be a huge concern. But you are going to need that ground. If everything is not grounded correctly, your shielded Ethernet cables are going to cause you often, I'm not going to say for sure, but often are going to cause you more trouble. Like, you think that you're buying, remember, 2 of these, not the blue ones, 2 of these black ones cost the same as 10 of these, right? Just keep that in mind. Like, I think another one that might not have a ground is my Shield TV. I don't think that has a metal housing around the Ethernet jack. And the power brick is just an AC adapter, so it's just a barrel plug. So you wouldn't want to use a shielded cable. The Nintendo Switch previously, where you would have to use the I was gonna say nope, not Heiko, not Haribo. Previously there was Nyko adapters. There was the Nintendo one. But all of those USB adapters, to my knowledge, that are for or from Nintendo for their Wii U, Switch. I'm not sure about the Switch 2 dock. I'd have to go look. Most of those, though, are fully plastic. Once again, that's where you're going to want to go. And you use yourself an unshielded. These are much more flexible. You know, they got a ton of strain relief on them. You know, that's part of the reason why this connector is so deep and it goes in that far as well, is because even if the strain relief didn't do its job, which it does, you're not putting the strain on the conductors up front there. Monoprice by far has the cheapest cables. You can buy them direct from Monoprice. I often just get them on Amazon. That is one of the few things from Monoprice that is just sold on Amazon. Like, enough people know that these network cables are the jam. That's where they get them. And like, you know, so these are far easier. The CAT6a Slim Run, there are, I don't know, 15 color options or something for these. I just went, sometimes getting green instead of like the gray you want, or the black you want, or the blue you want, is literally like $5, So say it might be $26, and then getting green is $21 or something. If you don't care about the color, take the cheapest one. The only one that I try to avoid, as much as I like yellow, is yellow. And that often yellow is the cheapest. I carry yellow cables, and I would buy a pack of those if I was still an on-site tech. But I would not use them permanently. Yellow is always a test lead, always. And that might be why, because that's standard across, at least from my experience, that is standard across like car audio, right? They're using a yellow as a test lead, right? Small electronics repair / electrical engineering / all that sort of stuff. Your lead coming off your multimeter, yellow for a test lead, or temporarily connecting things together. Yellow is a test lead. In IT networking, yellow, once again, I would always carry one yellow, one red. Like I said, though, I knew a couple places that would specify specific VLANs with red cables, and they said, there's a giant sign that says, "Do not touch or unplug any of the devices, any of the red cables, or any of the devices connected to the red cables." All right, can do. Like that's the sort of stuff you do with that. But that's probably why the yellow is the cheapest, is because unless there's a reason for you to get yellow, they're traditionally a test wire, and a 10-pack of 10-foot or 14-foot test wires is gonna last you a good long while, so maybe that's why. Maybe somebody else, and if any of you other people out there know why yellow would always be the cheapest when I'm looking at these, from my guess, that is, I gave the reason why I think it is. As for these guys, the shielded ones, they come in 2 colors, at least if you want Slim Run. And I would go with these. They're quality. Basically, this is UTP, right? Unshielded twisted pair. And this is FFTP, which is that's shielded, double shielded. Okay, so what that means is the individual pairs are shielded, and the overall cable is shielded. I don't know if all of those are grounded. The outer one for sure would be, right? But even when I make my shielded CAT6a off my big spool, it's only the outer shield that is on there. So if I'm going to pony up for a slim thin run Ethernet cable, I'm gonna get one better than what I can make. Same thing here with these guys. Ain't no way I am crimping something that thin myself, right? And that deep in there and that close to that, right? That's why for these shorter ones that you're if you're 14 foot or under, and you're not doing you're not going to run it to a keystone or something like that, it is a patch cable. Basically, there's a plug in a wall or a plug on a switch, and you're running it to a computer, another switch, another device, right? That's where you should be using a patch cable. The other mistake that I'd been making, and it gets way easier if you just stop terminating your Ethernet cables with the RJ45 jack, or what is it, 8U8P or whatever it is, the the shielded CAT6a one. Don't do that. Just don't bother, right? Just keystone it, and then use a 1 foot to your device, or 3 foot, and ideally if you're going to keystone it, put it in a wall plate, put it on a little box, because they make these little I remember them back when they used to do them for DSL. I'd see them all the friggin' time, or for fax machines. There's little boxes, and they hold 1 to 2 keystones, and you just screw them right on the wall, and then the cable runs out the back, down the wall, up the ceiling, whatever. Do that, and then you can have that hard mounted, right? And you don't have to faff around with all the little wires for doing the crimping and everything, because you just did it with a keystone. And a lot of keystones nowadays don't even require punch down. You just line all the wires up, and you just do the whole thing at once, and it takes care of it. A lot of them will even automatically cut off all of the outer wires for you. So it just like you just go pump and just locks them all in, cuts it all off automatically. Do that. That is fixed so much, because the less of those crimps you can screw up, the better, right? The less issues you're gonna have. And even for those long runs, if you know on both ends of that run, it is not going to be grounded properly, don't run shielded wire, okay? I have, like, what is it? Plenum rated solid core CAT6a, like basically the thickest, burliest cable that I could get when I got it. Now I'm gonna make sure it's grounded properly on both ends, but you know, and then in that case, if you're doing that, well, you have to then get the shielded keystones, which cost like way more, right? Like way more. Like you can get like a 5-pack or a 10-pack for like a 1 to 2-pack of the shielded ones. Yep, and if you have shielded keystones and you want to put them in a patch panel, you have to have a shielded patch panel, right? And that costs more often. Then don't forget, wherever you mount the patch panel, you gotta ground that too. Ideally to your rack. Otherwise, your shielding isn't doing anything if it's not grounded. And this is why I was a little bit confused when they purposefully didn't ground the shielding on that subwoofer RCA cable, but it makes sense there potentially. It's a different application. We're not sending data, you know, over very, in this case, very small gauge, twisted pair, right? That was analog audio over what would be 2 wires. They end up using 4 for it. But normally you wouldn't want what they were trying to do there. So, questions, comments, throw them down below. I will have links to all of these down. Well, I say all of these. It's basically one page for the CAT6a unshielded, one page for the CAT6a shielded. Unless you know, once again, unless you know that your switch is grounded, has like a 3-pin plug, or you are grounding it, and then your PC almost always is, because it'll have a metal surround on the plug, and then your power supply has a 3-pin. It should be properly grounded, right? But if both ends aren't properly grounded, often these shielded cables, and a lot of the ones on, you know, like they'll try to upsell you on cheap garbage on Amazon, that, oh, it's shielded CAT7, CAT8. Here's why. Like, I actually went and did a CAT8 that they were running a 50-foot CAT8 patch cable. Okay, so 50 foot already an issue. CAT8 an issue. Oh, and it was a shielded one with a gold connector too. Yep. And they were running it out of a floor jack in the middle of a conference room. No, bad. First off, CAT8 designed for 40 gigabit, meaning you'd be like, oh, so it's faster, so it can handle stuff better. No, CAT8 is actually thinner gauge wire, designed to carry lower voltage signals, right? Because they're higher speed. I think it's lower voltage. Might be wrong there. But basically, it's designed for 40 gigabit, which means it's actually worse at doing 10 gigabit, like CAT6a is doing, right? Worse at that. Even worse if you're only doing 1 gigabit. It's not designed for that, right? And then it was also one of those like braided Ethernets. No, like they're just selling you in garbage. If you're gonna do anything, if you're gonna spend any money more, get a thin one. You know what else I'll toss in there is there's like a beefy shielded one from Monoprice. If you are going to have to do a 25 or a 50-foot patch cable, like where you're buying a pre-made cable with ends on it, right, and you're using it as a patch cable, not running it through the wall, go buy some bare wire, please. But I will link that other one on there. It is, I think, oh, another reason I should say, I forgot to mention this, another reason why you might do shielded PoE. Ideally, PoE uses shielded wire. power over Ethernet. It doesn't technically have to, but it is highly, highly recommended. So that might be another place where you... Now, with PoE, your PoE injector is going to be grounded. So that should take care of that, right? Or if it's a switch, the switch is grounded, then it goes to a device that then has a shielded connector on it. There you go. Some access points will still have, like, you're like, oh, I'm going to run a shielded PoE Ethernet cable to it, and they'll actually have a ground screw on the bottom. So you, like, even when you mount them, then you would still run the ground screw to something in that environment nearby that is grounded, to like the building ground effectively. Not all of them necessarily have that, but you get what I'm saying. Like you got to close that, and shielding does help super duper duper substantially. Like, that is why I sought that out for my my subwoofer, is because that hum that you would often hear from your subwoofer is actually, because that's such a low level signal, that's your RFI coming in there, or your right, and you shouldn't hear that if it's properly implemented. And I actually added additionally, along with that shield cable, a ground wire with it. And that was for special installation options. Well, did my research, figured out how I could do it, and I did it. Subwoofer sounding beautifully. It's been years since I've had one, because I've been out of the office, because I got a new TV and it moved, and I just, I did, especially with the old one, was not great. Been beautiful. But that would be another reason why, implementing shielding and it properly, and it works properly. However, especially when it comes to networking, you are often better off buying the unshielded wire for cheaper, because it's going to cause less issues when implemented properly. And I know some of you out there are going to be like, no, shielding's always the best. And then there was a whole thing we got into on, I don't know if it was Twitter or Threads or wherever, and people are like, no, everything should be shielded nowadays. I'm like, right. But if you do that, it has to be implemented properly. And most people who have an ASUS router at home that just plug their PC in the ASUS router, and that ASUS router only has a 2-pin AC adapter, that shit ain't grounded properly. You shouldn't be using a shielded cable. It's that simple. So, but I will include a link to that, the one I would recommend. If you must have a patch cable that is going over that, like, 14-foot limit, right? If you must have a patch cable for that, that's probably the one I would recommend. It is extra thick, extra beefy, designed for outdoor PoE use. So, like, it is overbuilt probably for what you're going to be using it for. But that means at that 25-foot, 50-foot, I think they even have up to 150-foot, you're not going to have an issue, right? That still would not be what I recommend, especially if it's a permanent installation. Get yourself a spool of wire, get yourself 2 keystones, and run it that way, and then have your 1-foot, 3-foot, maybe 5-foot cable on the end of it, just snapped in. Keystones make terminating Ethernet not horrible. Like, seriously, you go snap, it's done perfectly. The wires are actually held better than they would have been in an Ethernet end. Life's grand, I've terminated many and if you are going to start terminating your own wires, by God, get the pass through, please. You're going to get it way tighter doing it that way, way cleaner. Some people say, like, oh, but you can get, if you do that, you'll get leakage out of the end of the thing. No, you won't. Like, maybe yes, actually, technically. But if you're worrying about that, buy a pre-made patch cable. Because if you're going a long enough distance, you shouldn't be terminating it with, like, a RJ45 end. You should be terminating it with, just put a keystone on it. Okay? On that same note, if you're buying Ethernet ends, unless you're doing a whack ton of them, I would just buy the shielded ones. That's what I do, and then I just don't connect the shielding. Now, if you do a lot of these, obviously save some money. Don't get the shielded ends. Being that I'm out of the industry now, and my connectors are mine and that sort of stuff, it doesn't make sense for me to buy shielded ends and not shielded ends and yada yada yada. Yeah, you basically just cut the little prongs for the shield off, or just not connect them, and you're fine. That also means I only need one kind of boot, right? Because often if you notice that the connectors on here have different boots. That's what this is, right? That's a different boot than than this guy. See, that's a much more highly molded boot on there. When it comes to making the shielded cables yourself, generally the boot for the shielded cables goes up and over, whereas the unshielded can do what this did and go over and in. It's actually hooking on the inside of this connector, whereas often these shielded boots are going to go over, because what's happening under the boot is the ground, like the connector is connecting to the what do you want to call it, the shielding, the outer shielding of the Ethernet. So that's why the boot's there, to cover it up. They do different things in different environments. But if you're under 14 foot and you are just doing, like, you're not having something that'll plug and unplug regularly, right? Buy yourself patch cable. Now these are very stiff as well, because remember, they're double shielded. I believe it is still stranded wire under there. But because of the double shielding, they are very, very stiff. If there is something that you're going to unplug and plug frequently, I mean, it's highly unlikely that's going to be grounded properly anyway, but I would go with the non-shielded wire there. It is far more flexible. It's actually like droopy in hand. Like, it is kind of crazy where this tech has gone from my old cables to go blue CAT6a, and I actually found like a brand new one, and I didn't realize how old those cables were, right? And I found like a new, like, no, it was either still in the wrapper or still had the twist ties on somewhere down here when we were cleaning up. And I compared that color, and the amount of, like, basically the color between the cables was that, right? Except they weren't new in box. They were like UV soaked, right, over the years. And you can actually see some of the shielding in some of the wires, like the actual outer cable sleeving was breaking down. And some of it was getting a little kinky, like, because those were proper CAT6a, some shielded, some not, that I bought way back. You know, we're talking, I don't know about 04, but 05, 06, one at a time as I needed them, and they were quality. They lasted decades, you know. But it turns out, yeah, at a certain point you do need to replace them. Part of the reason why those were as worn as they were is they would be like on my floor with my desktop with wheels on, and I'd like roll the desktop over it, or I'd pull it out and plug something and then plug something else in. A lot of that's really tough on the patch cable. You know, and a lot of times I might even run it through stuff, which is not what a patch cable is really designed for. You know, to get from one area to another area, or back then, because I didn't know often when I was buying, like, I'd always have one new extra one in the package, you know, and it's kind of what I plan to do around here, but I didn't have money to. Also, if you get like I got a 7 foot, a 5 foot, and a 3 foot, right? So a lot of my stuff I'd need like 10s or 14s, so it'd always be a 14 foot, even if I'm going 3 foot. So it's like, where do you put the extra wire? And then the extra wire would get caught on stuff, where when you push a desk back, it would clip it, you know, like all that sort of jazz. So basic thing, only get the shielded ones if you have proper grounds. Otherwise, get the unshielded ones. Buy the length of cable that you need, unless you're really tight on money. Then obviously you know, maybe do a 10, and then at most with patch cables, stick to 14 feet and under. The under is an important thing. Like, buy only a long as cable, especially if you're buying these shielded ones that come in individual packaging. Buy only as long as you need. I've made that mistake with XLR cables and other audio cables before as well. Sometimes you're actually paying more for less wire to get a specific one for the thing you need, but that can solve, or like not create issues. It doesn't necessarily solve issues. Now, if you bought the longer wire, had issues, then you solved it with the new thing, then you're solving issues. Yeah, you can very easily, by using quote unquote too good of wire, just the improper selection of wire, cause issues with your networking. And then when you're trying to do 10 gigabit Ethernet like I am, less so now, but it's very easy to make some simple mistakes that don't then get you the full 10 gigabit. And you might have like weird dropouts, and you're like, why can't I ever hit the full speed? And it's because your fucking cable, or how you did the wiring, or you don't have enough routing, or, you know. So you just want to try and not make, like, you're going to run into less issues just getting an unshielded cable of even the improper length. You know, you're going to cause less issues with that than getting a shielded cable and not having a ground on the other end, or on both ends, I should say. Also, here's another thing with shielding and grounds. Ideally, your building you're in has one ground. Otherwise, you're going to create a ground loop. Because if, say you go between buildings, and say it's an extension of your house, and they put a different ground in, like as in like a literal like grounding pole or whatever into the ground, right? And it's grounded on that end with that ground, and you're using shielded wire. Well, this ground on this end is a different ground than that ground on that end. That can happen also going across buildings, or going from one building to another. Like, say you've got an outbuilding or a shed and you're running Ethernet there. You know, you get, that's where shielded wire can also cause you issues. So it's kind of more of a, that's why I have so many few. I basically bought 2 of each size, except for the blue ones, because they were, I got 4 of the 3-foot, because I'm going to be using 2 of these for testing my network. And you're like, well, why do you need like fancy cables for testing your network? I really don't. They do need to be shielded though, because my tester can do shielded wire testing, and a lot of the wire I will be putting in is going to be shielded with shielded keystones. So in order to test it, I need that shield. 3-foot's fine. For doing a lot of the testing, the 1-foot is just too short. You can't get the receiver far enough away to like beep beep boop beep boop things, you know. But often, like, I don't want a 14-foot cable hanging off that thing. Or I might use a 1-foot on the end where you plug in the wall. That'll hang out, right? Out of the keystone in the wall. And then in the basement, or wherever you're at, where you're checking all the wires, with the other end, you might use a 3-foot or a 5-foot or a 7-foot. I was just completely tapped out, and I was having to use shielded cables where I shouldn't be using shielded cables, and then when I needed unshielded cables, I only had 10-foot ones, which a lot of my stuff around here, I would normally side with 10-foot, because 6-foot is the distance, the generalized distance between your outlets and your wall. That is why all cables are 6-foot, like a lamp cord, 6-foot, because they're like, oh, you'll never be more than 6 feet away from an outlet. The problem is once you go from that outlet down to the floor, up the back of your desk, plug it into something, that's more than 6 feet. So almost all cables, if you're going from something that is on your floor to something that is on your desk, you're going to need, like, 6-foot just makes it for a lot of my stuff, which is why I tend to go with the 10-foot. But when I'm going from one network, like I'm going from one networking device to another networking device, and they're that far away, you know, 3-foot would be great. $20 I don't think is too bad either for a 10-pack. I don't know. You guys can tell me if you... I've had very good luck with mono-price stuff. I've also used Cable Matters, cables to go. Like, those lasted a long time, but a lot of those companies don't have this Slim Run stuff, and I really got to liking, and I'll spend a little bit more to have the Slim Run stuff. It just keeps things cleaner, really flexible, in the non-shielded, and makes it easy to manage. Some would say, like, oh, this is out of spec because it's using like 36 gauge instead of, like, I don't remember if it's 22 or 26 gauge. Oh, we can't use that in our data center because that's out of spec. Okay, yep, then make sure you are getting the 2 spec exact things that, like, your hardware vendor says you need to be using, or your stuff needs to be using to be certified. Okay? From my experience, these are quite good. The only step up from there, and they look very similar, is True Cable stuff, but right now they only have CAT6, right? And I need CAT6a and CAT6a shielded. For the patch cables under 14 feet, you could probably get away with, actually can get away with CAT6 for 10 gigabit. Technically, it's not certified for that though, right? And I'd rather just wait till they come out with the good stuff. And then I probably will. By that time, hopefully the network's set up and I know exactly where this is going there. It's plugging into that. I need this length cable, and I will order one from them. And the singular cable is going to be $25. Here's the thing, though. Some of these might be bad out of the box, and you'll have to return them. The weird thing is they'll be broken in, like, indeterminate ways. And it's not even just model price, any of the brands. Like, they don't test them. They might test a batch and then grab 1 to a few out of 1,000 of them or something. And that might even be pretty high up there. True Cable, on every one of their patch cables, puts it through a fluke tester and makes sure it meets specification. They don't give you the report because that would have raised the price up even more. But every single one of theirs goes through. Also, it uses their connectors, which are high quality connectors, like their crimps, their boots, it's all stuff they've used, rather than, like, if you notice, like I said, this has a different boot. These aren't made by Monoprice; they're just sold by Monoprice, so there's no consistency between all their products, right? Whereas with True Cable, it's like their patch cables with their connectors, with their boots, and it comes single cable per pack, and you pretty much know you pull that out, it's not going to have issues. I will gladly switch over to those one by one once they're available in CAT6a and CAT6a shielded. Most of my stuff, like, I'm going to be using their patch panel. I'm probably going to be using their little hut thing, their little thing that holds 2 keystones. I'll be using their green ground cable, like all their stuff. They build it out so, like, they have what they consider to be the best option for that thing, and they make it, and it works. And unlike a lot of other brands, it's not incompatible with, say, the Monoprice cable or the Klein ends or something, right? It's all intercompatible. So somebody, a team of people who know what they're doing are basically doing the research that I had to do while I was at work to figure out, like, when we're on site, it's like, okay, I need grounded ends. Which brand are we getting grounded ends from? Because when it comes to networking, a lot of times, you're not going to get, like, the boots that you like aren't from the same brand that the connectors you like, and the cable, well, the place you're working at might provide the cable, or you might have to order your own, or, it's all inconsistent. Whereas True Cable, it might be a little bit more, but they let you just get everything from one place, which for me as an end user, I trust them, and I know that when I order from them, it's going to be a quality thing. The other thing, as a home lab end user now, or like when I had to go to my grandparents, I only needed 4 keystones, right? I don't want to have to buy a pack of 25 to get 4. They'll sell me 1. Once you get to like 10, I think it starts doing where it gets cheaper and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff, like Klein shielded, I just remember, like, a pass-through Ethernet connectors, like where you pass the wire through it and then the crimper cuts it off, right? Klein ones of those. Minimum pack of 50. I probably won't use 50 in an entire spool. So, I have to check out their stuff. I have a huge video of all of my initial batch of their stuff coming in. And I'm sure once I do more around here, there's going to be more equipment coming in. So if you like networking stuff, and also if you think I'm wrong, correct me down below. What would you use? Why would you use it? How would you do it? Hopefully we'll see you in future videos. Peace.